Good afternoon, Gold Mine podcast followers. Please let me take a moment to thank you for liking us, following us, but most importantly, subscribing to our channel, and we love comments. Today, we have a special guest, Brian Seiberling. Brian is CFO of the Reserves Network and has been with the Reserves Network for over 5 years and in the staffing industry for over 12 years. Brian attends and helps moderate CFO roundtable discussions in the staffing industry and other industry leaders. Brian has helped lead the growth of several staffing companies over his staffing career through organic and strategic acquisitions. So, welcome to the Gold Mines podcast, Brian.
Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Glad to have you. And our conversation today will encompass exploring how staffing agencies can help companies with workforce planning, forecasting, budgeting, and workforce optimization. But before we get started, Brian, I have a little joke for you. See if you know the answer.
All
Why
right.
are accountants so calm, composed, and methodical?
I don't know.
They have strong internal controls, Brian.
That was good.
Yeah, that's good.
That was a good
Okay.
one.
Well, I kind of made you laugh. That's cool. So let's get started, Brian. So one of the first things that I think we'd like to hear from you and during this discussion is, can you provide an overview of what workforce planning entails and why it's crucial for companies in today's business landscape?
Sure. Workforce planning. It's very critical because you have to be able to manage both your current and future workforce needs. And while doing that, you're looking at the talent that's going to be needed for, your projects, assessing what's out there in the workforce, what the availability of all that is, and then you have to implement the strategies to pull all that together, right? It's kind of like I call it the 4 Rs: the right people with the right skills and the right positions at the right time, right? So
Oh, okay.
having
Yeah.
all that together is quite a process, and it's a lot of planning on both sides.
Yes, indeed. I know. So, what are some of the common challenges that, companies face when it comes to workforce planning, and how can we, the Reserves Network, as a staffing agency, help address those challenges?
Yeah, sure. I'll take the first part of that question on some of the common challenges. I kind of have 8 highlighted here that I was thinking of as we are preparing for this. One is the uncertainty of the business environment, right? Everything's changing, the market changes. You got global events that change things. You got strikes
Yeah.
that change things. So aligning all that with your business priorities and everything else is one of those challenges. Data technology, and the limitations of those, so there's a lot of different data technologies out there nowadays. You got to be able to use those and manage those, for your workforce. And hopefully you'll gain some of the efficiencies and accuracies, as you go through that with the planning efforts. The big thing that we face too as staffing agencies is skill shortages. Having the right skills, the right talent, the right time to get all this stuff done is very critical, and especially when you got projects and specialized skill needs.
Yeah.
Some of those areas, like in construction, for example, finding some of those skilled trade people are very hard to find now because a lot of them,
Like
are
trying to
retiring.
find a dinosaur.
Yes,
Hey, go
yes.
out and get me a dinosaur. Oh, okay. Go
Or a
ahead, Brian.
unicorn,
Sorry.
something like that.
Or a unicorn, a purple one.
Yeah, I found
Purple
out the
squirrel.
unicorn actually, I think, is like the state animal or country animal for Scotland. I didn't realize that. It's actually the animal for, my daughter told me that the other day. It's pretty
Really?
interesting.
Didn't I know that?
Yeah, I
That's
didn't know
good.
that either until my job, like, really, unicorns? But all right, whatever. Demographics and changes, workforce, we got aging population, workforce,
Yeah.
generational shifts to work with, right? You got Gen X and, and all of them. So you got to be able to figure out how to work with all that as well. You got the cost constraints, which is, what we can really help with as well. I'll get a little bit into that. I'm gonna kind of go into the business problems, and then I'll go into how the staffing companies staffing company like us can solve those. I got regulatory and legal compliance, a lot of state laws and changes, especially in more states recently with Illinois and New Jersey with a lot of their different labor laws, and so forth going on. So there's a need to know all that kind of stuff from a legal and compliance standpoint.
And we're in what, 12 states now?
Well, we have physical presence in like 12 states, but we do
12
business in about 35 states.
Yeah, so
So,
that has to
yeah.
be quite challenging, Brian.
Yeah, it is. We got a list of compliance things for each state as we go into them that we need to make sure we check the box and do.
Yeah.
Each one is a little unique. Not one is not a one size fits all box for that, for sure.
Right.
Organizational resistance, some you got to make sure your employees and the management it wants to change and have change, because sometimes there's resistance to change. You're gonna have to change some of your organizational structure sometimes to help adapt to some of these workforce changes.
Yeah.
And just making sure, kind of fitting all the pieces in the puzzle together, right? You want to make sure there's alignment of all these things kind of going on for your overall business strategy, to really, make it effective, for your company. Staffing companies, how can we, address kind of this list? And I kind of got a little bullet list of kind of things that I thought of as I was
Please
going
go
through the
on.
workforce. One of the things is access to talent. As a staffing company, that's all we do day in and day out, having
Day in and
access.
day out.
We've been into, the Reserves Network has been around for almost 40 years now. We have a wide pool of talent, in a lot of markets in which we service. And that's critical, having access to that talent. The flexibility, a flexibility of workforce is critical to its operations. You want to make sure you got the right people in the right seats at the right time for all those orders. Because if you don't, you can have, cost overruns, which just digs into your profitability and allows you to do less things as a company as far as a growth perspective.
Yeah.
Expertise, like I said, we've been doing this thing for almost 40 years. We got a lot of different awards for, our best in staffing and stuff, for really being experts in our level. We got many specialties in which we can handle and help. And we have experts in each one of those, because each one of those specialties is a little different than the next. So it takes a little bit of that. Cost control. This is a big one for a lot of companies, because usually for these projects and scenarios, usually we're one of the best opportunities for that, because we could help. Speed is key too. We get the people in there, get your project done,
We're
complete
supposed
it.
to be the experts, so yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And with that cost control comes a little bit of the risk control too, as well, right? So we're helping you control your unemployment costs, workers' comp costs, because that's part of the burden that we take on as,
Yeah.
the people that we're putting on your workforce or in your workforce to help you or supplement you are our employees, not your employees. So we're
Right.
taking some of that risk control away from you as well. Compliance assistance, like I said, we do business in, 35 states. So we know a lot of labor laws, some of the hoops you got to jump through in some of the cases, making sure everyone's compliant. We're compliant with the different, laws, both, nationally, state level, local level, because sometimes there's local laws as well that get involved in our staffing. Scalability, which we kind of touched on with part of the cost control, is we can wind up. We have customers where, they have demands up as high as, like right now for seasonal business that get, over 200 employees at one time. Then they'll wind down, all the way through their season, come March, where they'll wind down to like 20 people.
Right.
But that all fluctuates based on the demand and how much product they get in between now and then along the way. So we're able to scale to the needs of our customers, which is critical. It's a lot harder for a company to do by itself, as far as being able to have that flexibility and scalability. Specialization, like I mentioned too, we got a lot of specialties that we work with at the Reserves Network, so we could help with just about anything you have from a staffing perspective or need. We got a lot of roles that we've filled in over the years and over our vast experience, so we can really help with that. And one of the other big things, I kind of touched upon with the challenges before with the companies is technology. Right, technology is not cheap; it's expensive. We've been investing in a lot of technologies over the last several years. and many tools to make make our job a little bit more efficient and faster, to be able to get scalability and get people out there fast, have that flexibility. There's a lot of technology, that goes into that to be able to have those deliverables so fast, from a cost effective perspective.
So, Brian, I got to ask you, I mean, all these things that you're telling us about out here, I mean, as a CFO, I mean, do you, I'm sure your job itself is monumental, but do you like have to work with the different departments in our company, like risk and every department to come up with all this? How does that work?
Yes. The role, at least from my perspective, the role of CFO is not just a finance driven position.
Okay.
It's a leadership position, which also involves operations, technology. I also head up our technology group, which is,
Wow.
it integrates with all this, right? So we have the financial perspective, we got the sales perspective, we got the operational perspective. We got to make sure everybody's working in unison to make this, a successful venture for our customers.
Right.
So driving all that, making sure everyone is on the same page and moving forward with all the customers' needs in mind is critical.
Okay. I just have one more question for you. So,
Mhm.
how do you see the future of workforce planning evolving? And what trends or innovations should companies prepare for? Not just staffing companies, but other companies as well. What do you advise? What's your advice?
Yeah, I think we've just seen the beginning of a lot of our technological evolution, I guess I'll call it, right? Last time we've seen something this big was like when the internet was kind of born, with the technology we have nowadays with AI, automation, a lot of new software. There's, for anything you could think of, there's probably 10, 20, 30 different software that do that same thing. It's going through those and figuring out what works best for your organization, depending on what you want, what your workflow is, how you want to optimize your workforce and all the productivity and everything else. So a lot of that technology, you want to make sure, at least from our perspective, we're looking at trying to focus in on what we call lower level tasks, right? We're a people business, so we need to have that human touch. That's what HR is, as well.
Yes.
So we want to be able to automate as much as we can, but at the same time keep all that, all the human touch that we need to make sure we're optimizing the talent, making sure they're focusing, and we're finding the right spots for all this talent too. We're optimizing their skill sets as well, which is critical, and we want to try to drive efforts away from what we call in the accounting, in the finance world, non-revenue producing activities. We want a lot of our recruiters and our field people working on revenue producing activities and satisfying customers' needs, rather than working on the backside and doing some of those more low-level tasks.
Yeah, and there are some, non-producing positions in a company such as ours too, because I mean, it's like there's all different pieces and parts. And I think that you have given today a very wide scope of what it is to be involved with a staffing agency. Some people think that it's easy, but there are a lot of intricate pieces and parts that go into running a staffing firm, such as the size of the Reserves Network. And I really like all the things you talked about today. It resonated with me. There are some things, Brian, I got to tell you, I didn't know that you had your hands in. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate you so much. Today, I usually end my podcast, Brian, with, a Debraism, but today I read this somewhere and it kind of resonated with me. And some of you out there may have heard this before. Brian, you may have heard it before, but here it goes anyway. It's called "That's Not My Job." And this is a story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. So somebody and anybody, there was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job and everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. And it ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes complete sense.
And I mean, listening to all the things you're doing, I bet you're like, yeah, I want that. I want that.
Certainly, I can use that.
Well, thank you, Brian. Great information today. I appreciate you taking the time, especially now knowing all of the things you do. And remember, everyone out there, subscribe, like, and follow us on the Reserves Network channel, Gold Mines Podcast. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you.